Hey guys, Tara here for Rev3 Games, and I have the great pleasure of being joined today by Mohamed Gambouz. He is the art director on Assassin's Creed Unity, which, as you probably know, is set in Paris around the time of the French Revolution. But you guys have been very insistent about the fact that this is not a historical documentary. It's more of a stylized, personalized version of events. How do you sort of stylize something like this? How do you reconcile realism with stylization, and where do you draw inspiration from?
We mainly draw inspiration from the paintings of the era, because they already did the exercise of taking a historical context and trying to convert it into an interesting visual language. So we were very inspired with this work that had been done, and additionally to that, we took all these information and tried to compile them and see what fits better with the perspective we want to give about the era. The second motivation for that is also we knew that our tools would allow us to have a very realistic image, but we needed our image to stand out even more and make it somehow more personal and more unique. So from there we came up with the approach of exaggerating certain things, visual things like the shapes of the architecture, the colors, the atmosphere. So for example, we knew that during that era there was fires, there was ransacked places, there was burnt furniture around the place, there was cannon shoots and things like that. So it's a very thick atmosphere. So in the game we exaggerated that a little bit more. We did also the same approach for Bièvre, which is a district of manufacturing. So we exaggerated the toxic aspect of the mood and for the atmosphere. And we did also the same kind of stylization also for the colors. So for example, knowing that it's French Revolution, it's all symbolized by the red, white, and blue. We take these colors and we exaggerated them.
Well, settings have always been a very important part of Assassin's Creed games, but you guys have mentioned a lot previously with Unity that Paris is kind of like the main character of the game. Can you elaborate a little bit on what that means and what it means in the context of Assassin's Creed specifically?
It means that it's as we know, it's the main city of AC Unity. It's the only city of AC Unity, and it was the right opportunity to say, yeah, this is one of the most important pieces of the game. So we need to put as much personality and as much depth into this character. From there, we said, okay, like any important character, let's have different facets of the same character. And from there, we come up with having different flavors depending on the location you are in. So we have 7 different districts, and each district has its own theme and its own flavor. It was for us a way to treat it like a real character. Additionally to that, we pushed anything that could bring life to the city, whether it's the number of the crowds, whether of the believability of the architecture, telling stories here and there. For example, just by putting the name of the streets, putting the names of the shops, it systematically creates depth, context, and life.
Well, it's funny you should say telling stories through environments, because you mentioned that in your presentation yesterday. How much of that is the environment itself, and how much of it is the things that inhabit the environments?
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned this kind of separation, because as you know, in the game, you have what we call the toy. So this is the base of the environments, whether it's the architecture or the crowd life. And you have a second layer, which is the mission layer. And this brings another layer of life. So imagine, like in the toy, you have a crowd life, you have a market, like people living their lives and doing their things. And once the mission starts, the narrative mission, the fact that you are following somebody or following your target creates some chaos into all of that. So you have kind of two types of crowd life. You have one, the orderly one, which is the market, and the second one, which is the chaos into that market. So it gives more depth and gives more diversity in terms of what's happening in the city.
So 7 different districts, how different are they from each other, and how do you sort of differentiate between them?
To make them different, we did a differentiation on most of the levels. So in terms of colors, we pushed the kind of colors you can find on the architecture, the architectural styles. For example, if you go to the Marais, which is the novelty district, it's more elaborate, more ornamented and colorful architecture compared to Bièvre, which is more bric-à-brac. It's like it's falling apart, and it's mostly from wood. If you go, for example, to the Invalides, which is half military and half countryside, so you see these huge spaces for the farms compared in contrast with very monumental military institutions. So it's very thematized on all the levels, whether it's the textures, the choice of textures, choice of architecture, choice even of the crowd or the people living in these places.
I was going to say, I feel like AI is kind of a natural part of that, because you have, very dilapidated, poor sections of the city, and I assume the AI there has to be different to account for that, right?
Yeah, definitely. If I take again the example of the Marais, you have more street performers because it's the rich quarter, and it's also, they are almost disconnected from the revolution, so they are living their lives, they're having parties, they're having fun. Compared to Bièvre, where it's more a ghetto-like, so you see sick people in the streets, you see workers having very tough times. When you go to the military district, of course, you see more of military people doing training to cannons or things like that.
So let's talk about the city itself, because you hear this phrase one-to-one scale thrown around in a lot of games, and obviously Paris is such a vast, expansive city. How do you actually manage to stuff all of the city into one game?
The thing is that we manage the scale in a case-by-case basis. So we took certain iconic elements like the Notre Dame, a couple other landmarks, and we said these landmarks, to be fully believable and fully immersive, we need them to be at one-to-one. For others that are maybe less important or could work also with the 70% of the real scale, let's do them 70%. The reason is that Paris is a very, very huge city, and we could never afford, like production-wise, to create all the city with all the tiny details. But what's cool is that the illusion is there. The way how we did it is that you don't feel that much this connection with the reality. And it's not the first time that we are doing this. We've done this on as I was art director on Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood. We did this on AC2. We did it on Brotherhood, and it worked pretty well. This time we did that, and what helped us even more is the fact that we can afford to have one-to-one scale, which wasn't the case before.
Right. How much bigger would you say, or what would you say the size is of Paris in Unity compared to cities in previous games?
Easily 5 times any city from AC2, maybe 3 times New York from AC3.
Okay. Yeah, and it's also interesting now because you guys have these seamless indoor-outdoor environments, which it seems like is something that the current, or I guess next/current generation of consoles has allowed you to do. Is there anything else that's completely new to this particular game that you guys haven't been able to do before?
There's a couple. There's lighting, which is a very complex system that had been built from ground up. That's something totally new and we couldn't do before. There is how the shaders, the materials, the textures are rendered. There's also the facials, how they are more detailed and more lifelike than we used to. There's all the post-production and post-effects, like the depth of field, the bloom. All these are more physically based, so they look almost like what you can get from a real camera. There's also the quality of the animations. Of course, we can afford even more fluidity.
Right.
Through the game, you'll feel that there's a lot of aspects that all have gained from the power of the new consoles.
One thing you did mention in your presentation yesterday was that this is the most thought that's ever been put into the art direction of an Assassin's Creed game before. What for you as art director was the most challenging part of recreating Paris from the ground up?
I would say it's the weight.
The weight?
Because when we started the game, we didn't have ready the technology to build the next gen game, because everything needed to be done from scratch. So it took us a while before having the tools, implementing the data and the assets, and saying, yeah, this is it. And that was I would say, it's the funnest and also the hardest part, is waiting until between the first flash you have of how you would like Paris to look like and the first screenshot where you say,
yeah,
this is it.
That's it.
It's a long wait, but it's very, very rewarding. When you get that, you say, oh,
yeah, I mean,
let's do this.
I can imagine so. It's been, what, 4 years now for
Yeah,
you guys?
yeah.
Long time coming. I cannot wait to get my hands on this game. Mohamed, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
speaking with me.
But to call Road Redemption simply a spiritual successor to Road Rash diminishes the splendor of what Road Redemption is.
The beauty and the simplicity and all the wonderful things about it.
Yeah.
What is its splendor?
It's a ragdoll nightmare hellscape
Okay.
of physics and motorcycles raining